Awesome. Well, once again, thank you very much for taking my call today. I'm really glad talking to you. You gotta know, Chicago is one of my favorite bands, so it's very interesting to have both of you here before you come to Mexico. But I want to ask you, before being together in Chicago, I believe you guys met before. Can you tell me the story of how you guys met?
Well, actually, I met Jeff through John Cowan, who plays bass for the Doobie Brothers. Because Jeff was coming up to Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I was living at the time, and he was playing these drummer jams. They would have these jam nights with different drummers that they were honoring. So it would be, Neil Peart night or
Oh.
Steve Smith night or and then all these different drummers would play and Jeff would come up and play bass and sing. And when the Chicago gig opened up for the tenor vocalist, the first person I thought to call was John, because John is a great tenor singer and he plays bass. But he said, I'm already playing with the Doobie Brothers. And he said, and right at that time, it looked like it was just going to be a temporary gig. So he said, I can't leave my, I would love to. He said, I love Chicago's music. I'd love to do it, but I know a guy. He said, I know a guy. He's out of Florida and he sings great high tenor vocals and plays great bass and he looks good. And he gave me Jeff's number, and that's how we connected. That was pretty much the way it happened.
I find it a great story. It's interesting how through playing these timeless rock and roll classics, you guys met.
Yeah, that's the beauty of music, you know. It brings people, not only does it bring people together at a show, but it brings people together who may have never have crossed, you know, their paths may have never crossed before. So it's kind of a cool magical thing, you know. And what's funny is when Keith called me, um, we instantly like hit it off. We became fast friends, and he helped me get ready for the Chicago show and everything. And so there was like an immediate bond right there as soon as the first time we talked on the phone.
And
Well,
it's go ahead, Kit.
I was going to say, and the other kind of funny part of it was, for me, was that before I met Jeff in person, I went onto YouTube and I started looking for Jeff Coffey on YouTube, and most of what I saw was him actually playing guitar and singing, not playing bass,
Okay.
right? And and so I called John Cowan back and I go, "Are you sure this guy plays bass?" And he goes, "Yes, he plays bass and he sings great. You need to call him." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, and then I sent Jeff it basically tracks of a live Chicago show with the bass and the lead vocal removed, and he recorded himself and videoed himself playing and singing. And as soon as I got those, I knew we had our guy, and I sent it over to all the original guys, and they went, "Wow, yeah, this is the guy." So he was the guy.
The guy.
And I find it very cool that Jeff mentioned how you immediately became really close friends. And I do want to know that, well, after both of you left Chicago, how did you decided that you were going to keep on playing together all these great music, all these classics, and form the players?
Well, that when I was in the band, we had Keith and I had talked about, you know, writing and recording music together while I was in the band and like doing a side project. But with Chicago's schedule, there really wasn't a whole lot of extra time to do stuff like that.
Totally.
Then I left Chicago, and Keith was still there for a little bit, for a little while, a few years, and we always kept in touch, you know, and we always said, you know, we ever find ourselves in the position to be able to do this, you know, let's get together, you know. And we did. So we always stayed in contact with each other. And then lo and behold, a few years later, we found ourselves able to get together and do something like this. So it worked out, you know.
I want to say that I think you were the first phone call I made after I knew that I was no longer playing with Chicago. I picked up the phone and I called Jeff and I said, "All right, it's on. Let's do this." So
That's
that's
right.
how it happened.
Yep.
You mentioned how you plan it to be a side project on your time with Chicago, but besides playing this, the classic hits, have you sorry, to write new music, to maybe record a whole album? What can you tell me?
Yeah, that's something like I mentioned. We wanted to do this for a long time, for several years now, and now we're in the position where we can do it. So that's something Keith and I are getting ready to write and record a brand new album of original material
Ah,
under the name of the Players, and so we're really excited about that, you know, because that's something like I said we've wanted to do this for a while. So and I think we're gonna document the whole process too. We're gonna record the writing sessions, the pre-production, recording the record, just us hanging out, you know. So that'll be some fun footage to have, you know, the making of this record with Keith and I, because it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun journey. So
Right. There'll be a lot of footage of us like sitting around going like, "Do you like this? I, do you like this? I don't know. You like
yeah,
that? How
that,
about
that,
this chord? Yeah, that's a good chord. I like
yeah,
that
I
chord.
could do something with that.
Play that chord."
that
Okay.
that could be part of a director's cut if you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
exactly.
But
All the outtakes.
Yeah,
and bloopers too.
yeah,
Well, but beside playing, what I find fascinating is that beside playing all these Chicago hits, you also play Earth, Wind, and Fire music. And I do believe, to me, it's a timeless band. It's timeless music. You still listen to their songs on the TV, on movies, video games, even everywhere. They're
Oh yeah.
everywhere. And I do want to know, what do you think, and how do you feel for you is the impact of Earth, Wind, and Fire on your lives?
Oh
huge.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's I mean, massive impact. You know, growing up being a Chicago fan and them being a big horn band. My older brother was the one who brought the first Earth, Wind, and Fire record home. And I remember the first time I heard that, and I just went, "Holy smokes, what is this?" You know, and so you know, the obviously Chicago and Earth, Wind, and Fire have toured together many times, so we've shared the stage. And Jeff was there for one of those tours, and it's probably one of the highlights of my entire musical career was getting to play on stage during the encore with Earth, Wind, and Fire and Chicago, and getting to play Shining Star and September and those great songs, which we are going to play at our show
that's right.
in Mexico City. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
And
for
we have Gordon Campbell on drums, who was with Earth, Wind, and Fire for a number of years. So it's pretty authentic
yeah.
as far as the groove and everything goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, you know, Verdine White was one of my bass heroes. You know, when I was young, when I was in high school and college, I spent a lot of time in my dorm shedding bass and shedding to guys like, you know, like him, you know, Leland Sklar, you know, Mark King, and a bunch of different guys. But Verdine was one of those guys that I really tried to pick up on a lot of what he was doing, you know. And so, I mean, to get the opportunity to share the stage with him and share bass licks and stuff, and that was just like heaven for me. That was awesome.
And,
Yeah.
and I-
Oh, I was just going to say on a bass note. Yeah, I remember when Jeff started to really dig into the Chicago music to do the live show. I encouraged him to go back and really listen to the original records. And I remember he called me and he said, "Man, I kind of almost passed over how great of a bass player Peter Cetera was when I was younger." He said, "But now listening to this stuff and really learning the the parts. I mean, what a great player he is, and what great bass lines he has on those records.
Yeah.
So
Totally. He's not only a great singer, but also a great bass player.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
it's Jeff.
Very underappreciated and underrated, I think, you know.
I think sometimes the if you're a great singer, it can overshadow your musical instrument. You
Mhm.
know, so sometimes whether it's Glenn Hughes or who was I just thinking of, or Richard Page from Mr.
Oh yeah.
Amazing singer, but he's a phenomenal bass player too.
Yep.
But everybody just knows his voice and they don't think about him as a bass player.
Yep.
So, oh, and there's a little guy named Paul McCartney that was pretty good too.
Right.
He's pretty good on everything he does, I may say.
That's true.
Right.
Rumor has it he played drums on a bunch of the Beatles stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's brilliant.
We have mentioned how Peter is a very underrated bass player, and actually, my next question is related to a former and to me very legendary member of Chicago. Both of you being guitar players, I do want to know also the impact that Terry Katz's legacy had for both of you, because to me he's fantastic. His solos are brutal on the first Chicago albums. Even Jimi Hendrix said that he was a better guitar player than him on the late 60s. What can you tell me about him?
Well, what I can tell you about him is I got to see him, unfortunately, only one time with the band. I saw the original lineup in 1975, which I'm dating myself, means I'm old. But I did see the band in 1975 in Washington, D.C., and I just remember just being so moved by how soulful and the amount of a passion and aggression that he brought to the guitar and his vocal. He was sweating and just and it was you could just I mean you could he didn't have to run around the stage or jump off of amplifiers or anything. He just stood in one place but projected all this energy into the room, and it just it blew my mind. And actually that was the first time I ever smelled marijuana, because the people that were sitting directly in front of me were smoking. And for some reason, the day after the concert, I broke out into a horrible rash, my whole face. Right? And what had really happened was I had gotten into a bunch of poison ivy the day of the show, and I'd gotten it on my face. But my parents told me that it was that marijuana that did it. I should never smoke marijuana because my face will break out in a rash. So they used that to discourage me from smoking the ganja. But no, Terry was amazing. I loved everything he did. Absolutely.